just mindful of the time, I wanted to share with people on the call why I've put the two slides I've put as the background. On the right, the organization, this is something that people introduced to right at the beginning of the cultural transformation, and Luke gave the first session and basically said to people, okay, Anthony Sive's no longer got the checkbook for the company, he's the CEO, we've taken the checkbook away, we've given you the checkbook. You can do anything, you can spend your money anywhere. And I want you to write down, what do you want to do? And then I want you to take the post-it note you've written it and stick it on which one of these three spaces you think things need to, where the work needs to be done, what needs to change. And what happens is most of the post-it notes go above the line. I think systems, processes, strategy, tools, skills, and tactics, those are the areas that need to change. And nobody thinks about putting a sticker on the culture. And the whole idea is then to say to them, is that a blind spot? That in fact, the place that needs to change is the third space, the cultural space. That's really where the transformation from being unsuccessful to being successful will come from. And the frustration was that in some, Coffs Harbour tended to work pretty well, but in other parts of the business, we really, really struggled to get people to understand the third space. And I think the insight that I got is really that there's a pathway to cultural transformation, that you can't just tell people the third space is important. They've got to come to it. And so what I've done is, on the other side, I've kind of used the three spaces differently. I basically said above the line, and I've called it strategy, structure, execution. Call it the hardware, which again, that organization part, above the line is hardware, below the line, software, culture. Put in this 2x2 matrix. And clearly what we want to do is get from where we are, which is in the bottom left corner. And you're always in the bottom left corner. It doesn't matter how good you are. You're looking to improve. And you want to improve both the hardware and the software. And the challenge is, how do you get from the bottom left to what's the pathway to get from the bottom left to the top right? And one of the reasons why it didn't work, and spent a lot of time trying to understand, why is it that in this factory, we just can't seem to get the cultural transformation we're looking for, whereas in other factories it seems to be working? Was there really that you have to start the journey going in the horizontal. You can't start with culture. You've actually got to look at the hardware, because if your workers say to you that the hardware is a problem, your strategy, structure, and execution are a problem, and you agree with them, then they blame that for the problems. And there's no reason, no need to change our behavior, because the other stuff's so crappy that behavior doesn't, and they know that. And so you've really got to make sure that you've got strategy, structure, and executional systems set up, not perfect, because they'll never be, but good enough where you can say to people, actually, our strategy, structure, systems, and execution are kind of good enough. That's not really the problem, that you can begin this cultural journey. So it's really, really important to look at that, look above the line as well, and just make sure that you haven't got massive gaps above the line, because if you have, people are not going to go on the cultural journey with you, because they can blame the stuff above the line and you agree with them. I mean, it's pretty hard to then say, no, we've got to go on this mindset transformation. So you've got to start going horizontally. And then people are going to say to you, oh, we can't do any better. You know, we've tried that and it's as good as it gets. And that's the indicator for starting your vertical journey. And it's a step journey. You don't get the cultural thing done in one step. They're small steps. So you go right, then, up, right again, and then up. And you kind of wait for people to say, we can't do better. And when they say to you, we can't do better, there's a cultural, there's a mindset change. That's the cultural journey. So you've got to step hardware first, then software. Hardware again, then software. So you've got to push improvements in strategy, structure, and execution until people say we're doing as well as we can. That's when you need the cultural shift. Then you move again to the right, then vertically. And as you get better and better strategy, structure, and execution, you can have much bigger cultural jumps. So the steps can increase in size vertically, whereas they've got to start large in the horizontal, small in the vertical. And that's really the challenge. And eventually every factory came on board. We transformed every place because we realized you got to start this journey on the horizontal, not on the vertical. So I hope that insight helps people understand that if you think you can't get cultural transformation, or if it's not working, you've got to look at the horizontal axis. And you've got to see, how do you get things to improve there first?
Excellent point. We need all three spaces, and we've got to understand that balance, how they all interact, don't we? We often try to work in one space without understanding the effect it has elsewhere. Certainly great point there, Anthony.